There is a Japanese word of just 6 letters called Ikigai. This word can explain why some people live to be 100 years old feeling happy and fulfilled, while others spend their entire lives feeling lost and empty. In this video, I will explain how this principle of ancient Japanese wisdom helped me find purpose in my life. But first, I ask you to subscribe to the channel and leave a like on this video. Also, activate the bell to always be notified when there is a new video. Now, back to the topic. Check this out. On the island of Okinawa, Japan, there are more people over 100 years old per square meter than anywhere else on the planet. And do you know what their secret is? It's not genetics, it's not diet, it's something much deeper. They have something that 90% of people in the Western world have completely missed. And when I discovered what it was, my life changed forever. I spent years chasing goals, achieving objectives, making money, but always with that strange feeling that something was missing. Have you ever felt that? That inexplicable emptiness even when everything seems to be going well? Well, until one day I came across this ancient Japanese philosophy that has a very simple name. And man, when I really understood what that meant, it was like someone had turned on a light in a room that had been dark for years. But before I tell you how this discovery changed everything in my life, you need to understand one shocking thing about the modern world. Do you know how many people feel fulfilled by the work they do? Only 13%. That's right, you heard it. A global survey showed that 87% of people in the world spend 8 hours a day doing something that doesn't fulfill them. And the worst part? With each passing year, the rates of depression and anxiety only increase. Even with all the technology, all the comfort, all the ease we have today. Why? Because we lost something fundamental. Something that some Japanese people never lost. And I'm not talking about any fancy technique or productivity hack. I'm talking about something much simpler and at the same time revolutionary: Ikigai. This word has no direct translation into English, but it means something like reason for existing or what is worth living for. But here comes the first plot twist of this story. Ikigai is not about finding your passion. It's not about following your dreams, and it's definitely not about just doing what you love. In fact, the Western interpretation of Ikigai is completely wrong, and this distortion has caused more confusion than it helps here in the West. When someone talks about Ikigai, those cute diagrams with 4 intersecting circles immediately appear, right? What you love, what you are good at, what the world needs, and what you can be paid for. But you know what? This diagram was created by an American coach. It has absolutely nothing to do with the original Japanese philosophy. And that's the first brutal lesson I learned. We Westerners have a sick obsession with turning everything into a formula, into a method, into something that can be hacked. But Iki doesn't work like that. In Japan, Iki is something much more subtle, much deeper. It's about finding joy in the little things. It's about waking up in the morning and having a simple but powerful reason to get out of bed. It could be tending your garden. It could be making breakfast for your family. It could be greeting your neighbors on the street. This reminds me of a story I heard from a researcher who spent years studying Okinawan centenarians. He says he met a 98-year-old man who every day, without fail, went to the beach to collect trash. When asked what his Ikigai was, the man simply replied, "To keep my beach clean for future generations." Simple as that. It wasn't about a brilliant career. It wasn't about making money. It was about having a daily purpose, a small but meaningful contribution to the world. And it made me completely rethink my life because I was looking for my Ikigai in the big things, in the perfect career, in the dream job, in the project that would change the world. But the real Ikigai was hidden in the everyday details that I didn't even notice. And when I stopped looking and started paying attention, everything changed. But calm down, because here comes the part that will really shock you. There is a Japanese concept called moai that is directly connected to Ikigai. And when I discovered this, a lot of things started to make sense. Moai is a group of friends that forms in childhood and lasts a lifetime. They meet regularly, support each other, and share both joys and hardships. And do you know what's crazy? Studies show that people who are part of a moai live on average 7 years longer than people who are isolated. That's because Ikigai isn't something you find alone. It's something you build in community, in relationships, in real connections. And here in the West, what is our biggest problem? Extreme individualism. We romanticize the idea of the self-made, of the person who achieves everything on their own, who doesn't need anyone. But this is exactly the opposite of what Japanese philosophy teaches. An anthropologist who spent 15 years studying the world's oldest living communities made a startling discovery. He found that across all of these communities, from Okinawa to the mountains of Sardinia, there was a common pattern. People in their 90s who still played active roles in society. According to this same researcher, the secret is not to retire and stop contributing. It is to find ways to continue being useful until the last day of your life. And that made me question something fundamental. How many people do you know who retired and literally started to waste away, as if they had lost their reason for existing? This happens because our culture treats work as something separate from life. You work to live and then retire to enjoy life. But in the concept of Iki, there is no such artificial separation. Your reason for existing doesn't stop when you turn 65. And that's when I had one of the biggest turning points in my life. I realized that I was building my identity on titles, positions, and external achievements. But what if all of that disappeared tomorrow? Who would I be? This question haunted me for weeks until I decided to do an experiment that changed everything. I decided to spend 30 days trying to apply the true concept of Iki in my routine, without formulas, without diagrams, without trying to hack the system, just paying attention to the little things that brought me genuine satisfaction. And you know what I discovered? My Ikigai wasn't in my profession. It wasn't in my big projects. It was in the things I did almost automatically, like those 15 minutes I spent watering the plants on the balcony every morning, or when I explained something to a friend who was struggling, or when I cooked for someone special. Small acts, small contributions, small moments of real connection, and that led me to an even deeper discovery. The word Ikigai is composed of Iki, which means life, and Gai, which means value or effect. Literally, it is the effect your life has on the world. It doesn't have to be a gigantic effect. It doesn't have to change the planet. It can be the effect you have on one person's life, or on your neighborhood, or on your family. But it has to be real. It has to be genuine. It has to come from within. And here comes one of the hardest parts to accept. In our culture, we measure success by numbers, salary, followers, likes, views. But Iki cannot be measured. It is an internal sense of purpose and fulfillment. This is why so many financially successful people feel empty inside. They have achieved all the numbers, but they have lost connection with their Ikigai. And I began to understand why the Japanese have an expression that says, "Wo mitsukata." I have found my reason for living. It's not, I chose my reason for living. It's not, I created my reason for living. It's, I found it, as if it were already there, waiting for you to pay attention. But there is a gigantic obstacle that prevents most people from finding their Ikigai. And this obstacle has a name and a surname. The biggest enemy of Ikigai is something we all face daily: rushing. The rush to grow in your career, the rush to earn more money, the rush to achieve goals, the rush to be someone important. But Ikigai works in Japanese time, not Western time. In Japan, there is a concept called hansi, which is about deep reflection and constructive self-criticism. They dedicate real time to thinking about their actions, their values, their impacts. When was the last time you stopped everything and spent an entire hour just reflecting on your life? No cell phone, no distractions, no rush to get anywhere. I know it seems like a waste of time, right? After all, time is money. Productivity is everything. There is always something more important to do. But this mindset is exactly what is killing us inside. The Japanese have another expression, mono no are, the awareness of the impermanence of things. It's about knowing that everything passes, that nothing lasts forever, and so each moment must be lived intensely.
This is not melancholy, it is wisdom. And it was when I started applying this to my life that things really started to change. Instead of chasing the next goal, I began to savor the process. Instead of focusing solely on the outcome, I began to find pleasure in the journey. And do you know what the most unexpected result was? I started to be more productive, more creative, more fulfilled. Not because I was forcing more, but because I was aligned with something bigger than my individual desires. And this led me to understand one of the most important lessons about Ikigai. A Japanese psychologist who studied the concept of Ikigai for over 20 years made a statement that changed my perspective forever. Iki is not something you own. It is something you cultivate. Like a garden, it needs daily care, constant attention, and patience to flourish. And that explains why so many people give up halfway. They treat Ikigai as a sudden insight, a revelation that will appear in a moment of enlightenment. But in reality, it is a daily practice of attention and connection. It's waking up every day and asking, how can we contribute today? How can I be useful? How can I bring a little more value to the world? And the answers can be surprisingly simple. Now comes the part that may sound contradictory, but is fundamental to understanding Ikigai completely. Sometimes your Ikigai may have nothing to do with your profession, and that's okay. I met a multinational executive who found his Ikigai by teaching underprivileged children to play chess on the weekends. I met a housewife who found her purpose by caring for abandoned dogs. I met a retiree who found his reason for living by making origami for hospitals. Society wants to convince you that you need to follow your passion and turn it into a career. But this is a trap. Sometimes the most revolutionary thing you can do is keep your work as work and find your Ikigai elsewhere. And that doesn't make you less accomplished. It makes you more complete. Because Iki is not about being extraordinary, it's about being genuinely you. So, after everything I've learned, after everything that's changed in my life, what's the most important lesson about Ikigai? It's just that you don't have to turn the world upside down to find your purpose. Maybe it's already there in the things you do without realizing it, in the moments that bring you silent satisfaction, in the small ways you contribute that go unnoticed. Maybe your Ikigai is the coffee you make with love every morning, or the way you listen to your friends when they need to vent, or the way you take care of your plants, or the way you teach someone something. The world puts pressure on you to be extraordinary, to change everything, to be special. But Iki teaches you something much deeper, that there is immense beauty in being ordinary with purpose. And in the end, perhaps this is the true Japanese wisdom that can change your life. Stop looking for your reason for existing outside and start cultivating it here, inside, every day, with patience, with attention, with gratitude. Because Iki is not a destiny, it's a way of walking.